So why am I suggesting you should give up on your art? I'm not strictly telling you to give up making art, but giving up on the version of art that you think you're supposed to be making. You might already be feeling a bit defensive hearing that, like I'm about to attack something that's important to you. If that's the case, then your reaction tells me just how deeply art is to your sense of self. This journey we're on is a tough one. As much as it's fun and exhilarating, it's also exhausting and, at times, debilitating. We set our sights on lofty goals, and we toil away for countless hours. Some days it flows easily, other days it really doesn't. And what makes it harder yet is there are no clear milestones. There's no obvious moment when you realize you've made it. Now that probably sounds a bit gloomy, but what I want to share with you today is actually a much more positive message. I want to break down the stages I've experienced so far as an artist. Stages I suspect many of you have gone through too. I expect not all of you watching are at the same stage, so I'm hoping by going through this with you, I can give you some comfort with wherever you are right now. This is not a how-to video. It's for us to take a pause, to step back, and look at where we are in our journey. And at the end, I'll explain what I mean by giving up on your art, and how that single thought caused me to rethink everything in a way that brought me back to art healthier and happier than before. My story began when I was a child. I was the art kid. All through the first years of my school life to the last, I was the kid that could draw. At the time, I didn't question it. It was just normal. If you were the art kid too, you probably know how early that identity begins to stick. People will reinforce it constantly. Teachers, family, friends, and before long, I draw quietly turns into, this is who I am. In class, I filled the margins of my textbooks with doodles, every inch of them covered in a random assortment of drawings. What's interesting is I didn't draw them for an audience. They weren't for recognition or validation. It was how I expressed myself, how I steadied my mind. But, of course, it was still great when my friends would pass them around to see what I'd been working on. Looking back, I don't remember feeling anxious about my art. I drew whatever came into my head. I didn't care about the fundamentals, mostly because I didn't know they existed. All I cared about was whether it looked cool to me. That freedom shows just how little I was concerned with failure, and how much I just wanted to express myself. When school ended, art education felt like the next obvious step. And that's when I experienced the first major shock to my relationship with art. I discovered that I wasn't special. Suddenly, I was surrounded by other kids who could draw. All of us former art kids from different schools. It was humbling to say the least. This wasn't a dramatic moment as such. It was gradual. A slow recalibration of how I saw myself. Very quickly you start learning the fundamentals and soon realize how much you don't know, which can really challenge your idea that you're talented. Suddenly, ability alone doesn't feel like enough anymore. On top of that, you now have a teacher reviewing your work and assigning you a grade. For the first time, you start to assign your worth as an artist to the value it receives. And even if you intellectually understand that grades aren't everything, especially in a discipline that is so subjective, they do start to influence how you see your potential and your limits. This is where I made a shift. I decided I was going to master it. I was going to get serious. Looking back, it sounds straightforward, but it really wasn't. For me, getting serious meant replacing curiosity with obligation. Drawing stopped being something I did because I wanted to and became something I felt I had to do. I remember the ups and downs, the plateaus, the frustration of putting in effort and feeling like nothing was changing. It wasn't until much later that I learned about the growth and plateau cycle and how easily it can trick you into thinking you're failing when you're not. For me, perfectionism made this worse. It derailed me repeatedly and honestly cost me years. Perfectionism is sneaky. It disguises itself as ambition, even discipline, but underneath it is often fear. And this brings me to the next phase of my journey. I started to lose touch with my passion. As before, this didn't happen overnight. This happened in a period after I graduated, and I was working professionally in VFX as a rigger, but not as an artist. I was still making art, still improving, but something vital was quietly draining away. When we start making art, we do it with freedom. We don't know what we don't know. We just want to make something. Over time, though, that freedom starts to dwindle. As we develop our skills, we discover new heights, new aspirations. We follow inspirational artists and watch countless online tutorials. What we don't realize is that those lofty goals we once had have started moving further and further away. And without realizing it, we begin to compare our behind-the-scenes work to everyone else's highlight reel, which is never a fair comparison. This is when my passion started to dip. What I found was that in everything I did, there were major flaws. Some bits looked great, while others looked obviously wrong. Instead of seeing progress, I only saw gaps, and the more skilled I became, the more I noticed them. And so, I did what felt logical at the time. I decided to master the fundamentals once again, but this time, I'd really knuckle down and fix everything. This was a dangerous phase for me. The problem with constant learning is that it creates the illusion of productivity. You feel busy, but not fulfilled. As a perfectionist, I have trouble accepting anything less than perfect. Slowly, I became my own worst critic. I felt less like an artist and more like an imposter. And when nothing ever meets that standard, starting becomes harder, finishing becomes almost impossible. I would sink hours and days into finessing every detail, fixing every issue, and the end result would come out looking stiff and empty. I'd look around and I'd see examples of expressive and energetic artwork, and there I was painstakingly removing all of that from my own work with my obsessive perfectionism. I got stuck in what I call the learning loop. But what I discovered the hard way was the learning is never done. And much like a muscle, it needs constant training or you begin to lose it. I found if I focused on one discipline, then another would diminish. So I'd jump back to it, hoping to bring it back up again, all the while losing focus elsewhere. And so, like some crazy stage act, I was jumping between spinning plates, trying to maintain momentum on all of them at the same time. But while my skills improved, something else didn't. My imagination. My ideas became smaller, safer. I was making art to test myself, but not to express anything. Eventually, I felt completely lost. I was developing my skills as an artist, but I wasn't excited about the work I was producing. Excitement is a powerful force as a creative, and I'd stopped listening to it completely. That's hard to admit, especially when art has been part of your identity for so long. And while art didn't become my full-time career, it has been integral in developing my ability to think creatively. But even knowing that, I still felt disconnected from why I started drawing in the first place. I realized I had no clear idea of who I wanted to be as an artist. I'd spent so long chasing improvement that I'd lost sight of enjoyment. Over time, I started to give up. Giving up didn't happen all at once. It was subtle. Fewer drawings, longer gaps between projects, and more excuses. It started to feel like I was closing off some integral part of myself. And yet, no matter how much I tried to walk away, I was always able to pick up a pen and doodle. I still couldn't help myself. If there was a scrap of paper lying around, I'd sketch a silly thing without thinking too much about it. How could I turn my back on that? And that's when I had my revelation. This is how it came into my head. No one will ever care about my art as much as I do. If I stopped today, the world would move on. People would accept it, and there'd be no dramatic fallout. Oddly, this wasn't a depressing revelation. It was liberating. If no one cares as much as I do, why not focus on what I care about? That might sound like a bit of a simple self-discovery, but hear me out. Once external expectations disappeared, I could finally reconnect with what I wanted from my art. For years, I'd forced myself through disciplines I didn't enjoy, and steered away from the things I did. Funnily enough, I was better at the things I enjoyed, but I viewed that as my way of having mastered them. And I only hated other disciplines because I was terrible at them. I always hated colouring, but out of some compulsion to show the world I could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best, I pursued it relentlessly. Well, no more. So I said to myself, you don't have to use colour anymore. You don't have to be perfect at everything. It sounds almost trivial, but removing that pressure instantly made me lighter. So I put down the iPad, I picked up a pen, and I started drawing again. And suddenly I felt alive. I started drawing for curiosity instead of improvement, exploring things like medieval history, collecting fountain pens, planning long-term projects I was genuinely excited about. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking, is this good enough? I was asking, do I care about this? I'm now comfortable with leaning on other tools to help fill in the gaps. For example, using 3D to create backgrounds. Ironically, this is the advice I've given students for years. Focus on what you're passionate about, because whatever that is, you will put so much more into that than anything else. And guess what? You can tell when someone is passionate about what they do. How odd that I failed to realize I wasn't following my own advice. If you make art for fun, make art you enjoy. Don't let your need to be the best, to be a master, to get everything perfect, ruin your ability to make art. And make sure your projects come first. The studying should support your projects, not replace them. If your art stops making you feel curious, something important has been lost. Anyway, that's it from me. Making this video has been more confronting than I expected. But honestly, putting this journey into words helped me understand it better myself. If this resonated with you, I'd really appreciate a like. And consider subscribing if you want to follow where this journey goes next. And I'd love to know, where are you right now in your art journey? If you're feeling lost, maybe this found you at the right time. Good luck out there. Keep doing what you love. See you next time.